Hello friends, welcome back to Amy Bakes. I'm Amy and today we're going to be baking a very special birthday cake. I have a very special guest here that's going to join me. This is Briana and today is Briana's birthday. I asked Briana what she wanted for her birthday and she said she wanted a chocolate cake, but she also liked pumpkin cake. So we're going to combine the two just in a different way. Okay. And I am going to be teaching Briana how to bake and decorate cakes. And so she's going to help me bake her birthday cake. So let's get started. We are going to use the same chocolate cake recipe that we used for the wedding cake. And that is the best chocolate cake ever recipe. And this one is compliments of addapinch.com. As always, I'll put that recipe in the description. But let's look at our ingredients and supplies. So for our ingredients, we're going to need 2 cups of all-purpose flour, 2 cups of sugar, 3/4 cups of unsweetened cocoa powder, 2 teaspoons of baking powder, a teaspoon and a half of baking soda, a teaspoon of kosher salt, a teaspoon of espresso powder, a cup of buttermilk, milk, almond milk, or coconut milk, but I'm choosing buttermilk, a half a cup of vegetable oil, 2 large eggs, 2 teaspoons of vanilla, and we're going to need a cup of boiling water. For our supplies, we're going to need our mixer fitted with the paddle attachment. We are going to need a bundt cake pan, and because these are such a pain to flour or grease and flour, we're going to use Baker's Joy for that. We need a wire rack for cooling, a 1 cup liquid measure, a couple of dry measuring cups, and some measuring. So the first step is we've preheated our oven to 350, and that's already done. And now we are just spraying this pan with Baker's Joy. Got that just about done. A bundt pan is very difficult to grease and flour because you've got the crevices, and then you're dealing with this part that rises up in the center. So for something like this, an odd shaped pan, Baker's Joy is definitely your friend. So that has been sprayed. Very good. I missed one little spot over here. And then we're just going to set that aside. Okay, so our first step is we're going to add our dry ingredients. Okay. Do you want to measure?
Sure.
Okay. So do you remember to spoon and level? And do you remember why you spoon and level?
Yes, because it's more accurate.
Bingo. Okay, so go ahead. We're going to need 2 cups of all-purpose flour. And actually use the green one, and I will use that one and get the sugar going.
Okay. How
Move that out of your way. There we go. So while Briana is getting the flour, I'm going to go ahead and measure out the sugar. And this is what I mean. I don't really level off my sugar. I just kind of shake it. I'm not as accurate on my sugar as I am on my flour. There we go. And there. One of the things I do is I always get out all of my ingredients. That way I can make sure I have everything. And then as I use them, I put them off to the side. That way I don't forget something. Because sometimes you get halfway through your recipe while it's baking in the oven, and you're like, oh my gosh, I forgot to add such and such. So that's kind of a secondary way to remember to make sure you got everything. Measure out 3/4 cup of cocoa powder, and I'm going to spoon this one and level it as well, because if you cram it in there, it gets really packed. You just have to be really careful with cocoa powder because it makes a mess. If you get like a plume of this stuff, it just goes everywhere. So we're going to measure 3/4 cup of this and level that off. There we go. And next is our baking powder and baking soda. So we need 2 teaspoons of baking powder, Miss Briana. Okay. And I will do the 1.5 teaspoons of baking soda. Isn't this can cool? Isn't that nice? I like that so much better than the boxes. So you're doing 2 teaspoons and I'm doing 1.5. So I'm just going to do 1/2 teaspoon 3 times. Good. And next we're going to need 2 teaspoons of kosher salt. Okay. The only one I have is this coarse, but that's okay. When you add the boiling water to it, it'll melt the salt. So you're not going to have grainy salt in there. So that's fine. So there's 1 and 2 teaspoons. And then we're going to need 1 teaspoon of espresso powder. And do you know why we use espresso powder with chocolate?
No.
It actually enhances the flavor of the chocolate. So even with the espresso powder in the chocolate, it's not going to taste like mocha. If you just add a little bit of espresso, it really brings out the flavor of that chocolate, makes it deeper and richer. And now we're just going to mix this in. And while that's mixing in, I've got starting my kettle to get my water boiling. And once that's mixed in, we're going to go ahead and add those wet ingredients. And the first thing we're going to need is a cup of the buttermilk. There we go. So let's go ahead and get that. I had to go to 2 different stores to find buttermilk. And you know, if you don't have buttermilk, you can also add a tablespoon of lemon juice to your measuring cup and then add enough milk to equal to the 1 cup line. And that is a substitute for buttermilk. And next we're going to add a 1/2 cup of vegetable oil and 2 eggs. And I can't use my eggs from my coop because we have a snake in my coop. So my chickens are laying eggs for the snake right now until we can get him out of the coop. Okay, we're going to mix that in real good. I'm going to grab a scraper. We'll scrape down the sides of that bowl. I don't know if you can get in there. Can you kind of go? There we go. All right, so we're going to do this on a medium. And then we're going to add 1 cup of boiling water. Oh, you know what I forgot? I forgot the vanilla. Okay, so we need 2 teaspoons-ish of vanilla. So I'm going to say that's 1 and 2. There we go. Now we're going to mix this in and then add the boiling water. All right, now we're going to get a cup of boiling water, and you want to be very careful here because this is boiling water. And so we're going to, it says to do this while the mixer's on, but it kind of splashes a little bit. So I'm just going to, I'll turn the mixer off and just kind of carefully pour that in there. You can see how hot that is. That is not something you want to mess with. Okay. And then I'm just going to stir that in just a little bit, and then I'll turn the mixer back on. Okay. There we go. Now let me turn that mixer back on. And then we're just going to mix this in. I'm going to scoot back just in case. You can see it kind of splashes. There we go. Just get that mixed in really good, and then we're going to pour that into the pan. This recipe actually calls for a 9-inch pan, or I believe 3 9-inch pans, but we're going to turn this into a Bundt pan. Okay. Now we're going to take this off, and you can see this is a very, very liquidy. All right, now take this out, scoop my mixer back, and then we're just going to pour this into a Bundt pan. I'm going to go ahead and scrape down the sides, and then we're just going to pour this into the Bundt pan. And I don't really have an exact time. The other cake, I'm sorry, called for like 35 minutes. Bundt pans usually take a little longer. So I'm going to set the timer for 40 minutes, check it, and just keep adjusting it every few minutes and seeing how much longer we need to do it. So we're just going to play guesswork at this. All right, we're just going to pop that in and set that timer for 40 minutes. And then we'll check on it and adjust the time accordingly. Okay, we are going to check that, and we're just going to insert a toothpick, and it should come out clean, and that looks pretty good. And so we're going to take that out, and we are going to let that sit in the pan and cool for 5 minutes, and then we are going to turn it out onto a plate. Now we're going to flip this cake out, and then we're going to let it cool the rest of the way. Do you remember why we use a paper towel?
So it doesn't stick to...
That's right. That's right. If I were to just take this and flip this cake onto this tray, when I go to invert it later, then all of this right here is going to be stuck to the plate. So the paper towel actually protects that. So we're going to take that and carefully, it's always the ta-da moment. There we go. And hopefully nothing stuck. So we'll take that off, and looks beautiful. So now we're going to let this cool completely, and then we're going to ice. So the cake is cooled for a little bit, and it's still kind of warm to the touch, but we're going to go ahead and wrap it up. You don't want to wrap it when it's too warm, but if it's just slightly warm to the touch, it's fine. So I want to show you the importance of this little paper towel. So what we're going to do is we're going to invert this over before we wrap it up. So here you go. And you can see right here, and as I pull this back, you can see this coming off on the towel. If this were just on a plate, that would have peeled off a whole lot thicker and deeper of a layer, and then you would have to try to cut it off and put it back in there. So that's why we use that paper towel. So you might lose just a little bit, but without it, you're going to lose a lot of that cake. So now we're just going to wrap this up. And while this cake has been cooling, I made some icing right over here. And I just followed the Wilton buttercream recipe. And I'll be glad to put that in the comments as well. So we're going to let this completely cool, and then we're going to assemble our birthday cake. Okay, this is the part where the kitchen gets really messy. And so all the background's going to be cluttered, and it just is what it is. So we have got a tray. I have colored a little bit of icing green and some orange. And I just use Wilton colors. And I've got my bags over here. Now let me show you what we're going to do for the cake. Okay. I made a cake yesterday, so we already have 2 cakes actually. Okay. So let me scoot this out of the way. And I don't have much space to work here, so it's kind of tight. One of the first things you want to do is put a little bit of icing on your board, because if you don't, then your cake is going to slip around on the, there we go, let me find my spatula. Your cake will slip around on the board. So you want to put just a little bit of icing on there, and that's just going to secure it. Okay? Very important step. All right, now we're going to unwrap this one. Okay, and I have to manhandle this. This is just the only way to do it. You could freeze it, make it a little bit easier to handle, or just manhandle it. But you got to go fast, okay, because otherwise it could split. Okay, there we go. So we get that, and we're just going to set that right there. Got it? Okay, so the most important step before you do a 2-layered cake is you've got to put some icing on here to adhere the layers together. If you don't, and you just stack this cake on cake, your cake's going to go straight off, okay? So you have to go ahead and cement this on there, okay? So we're going to take a bent spatula, and you're just going to spread this on. Now, however thick you want, that's kind of up to you. I'm going to get that bigger than that. And there we go. All right. So just put this on there, and that's just going to hold it together and also give you a little bit of icing there in the middle. Okay? Do you want to try doing this?
Sure.
Okay. So just take it, hold it like this. Let me show you. Hold it like this and just lightly go back and forth. Don't dig too deep. Okay? So just practice that. There you go. And remember, perfection is not required here. There you go. Be careful when you lift up, because you'll peel some of the cake. So as you lift, kind of lift and slide off almost. Okay, we're going to get just a little bit more over here. So I'm going to spoon just a little bit more in. Okay, right there. And maybe a little bit more right over here. Just let you kind of, here, scrape that off. There you go. And smooth that out. There you go. Good. Now we're going to add the top layer, and this is how the cake becomes a pumpkin. Okay, so I baked a second cake yesterday, or I guess this will actually be the first cake, and the one we baked today is the second. So you're going to put this on there, and you're going to line up the little grooves. So get my hand out of the way. You see how the grooves are here? You're just going to line those up, And make sure that that's on there fairly evenly throughout. We can scoot it back a little bit over here. There we go. Now we're going to seal up that middle crack, but I'm going to wash my hands first because I got cake on them. So my daughter just informed me that this looks like a Halloween Oreo. You know, the ones with the orange filling? So there you go, 2 cakes in one. You can have a pumpkin or you can have a Halloween Oreo cake. So what we're going to do now is just kind of come in here, and I'm going to have to just kind of work with you filming in there because it's kind of got to get in there. Okay, so we're just going to seal that up. Okay, and then we're going to go back and ice over it, but you just want to get that middle gap sealed. All right, I'm just going to smooth this out just a little bit, and then we're going to let this sit and kind of dry for maybe, I don't know, 15, 20 minutes or something, and then we will go back and add that next layer. So smooth that just a little bit. Now, for the stem of the pumpkin, what I have done is I have cut a ice cream cone. And if you just try to put it in there, it's going to sink down the bottom. So we're going to use this top part right here. And then we're going to go in with this like that. So now what we're going to do is just go back over and we're just going to ice the cake. Okay, just like this. And kind of, it doesn't have to be perfect because you kind of want the lines. You know, pumpkin isn't perfectly flat. It's got those lines. So perfection, again, is not required. So we're just going to go in and do this, okay, all over the cake. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to cut the tip of the icing bag, and you're just going to gauge it by this. So I'm going to cut it at about right here. And y'all are going to hear my dogs, by the way. It is really muddy because it's been raining and they are inside. And because it's been so muddy, they have not been able to get their energy out. So if you hear the yipping in the background, that is my dogs. Okay, so you are now going to just put the couplet in here. Okay. Now what this is for is if you're going to change tips and you're going to use the one color, and we're going to show you that on the green. You can just unscrew it, remove the tip, put your new tip on, and screw it back on. So that's the beauty of this little jewel. So we are going to start it with this one. This is the, we're going to make some vines on the side of it. And then you just screw that on. And then when it's time, you're just going to pull that off, take the tip off, and exchange it out. So that one will be for the green. And I'm going to do another one for the chocolate and one for the orange.
That's hilarious.
Okay, and go ahead and put a border on here, and I'm just going to do a shell border with a 32 tip. Squeeze, release, pull back while you release. And then just got to turn this around. This doesn't have to be perfect. We're probably going to come back and put a few leaves in there. So again, perfection is not required. Just squeeze, pull back, and release. Okay, now we're going to assemble our top part. So this doesn't sit in there perfectly, so we're going to have to give it a little bit of glue. You can consider icing like your glue. Can you hand me the little thing over there? Thank you. And we're just going to glue this right on there. Okay. Oh, look at that. Isn't that cute? And now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go around this, okay, and kind of cover that up with some chocolate icing. Don't worry about that because we're going to cover that up with some leaves or something. So I'm just going to go around this. This is a weird angle, but you know, we can make it work. and try to cover it. Okay.
Like you're doing an ice cream cone.
There you go. All right. Now I'm going to go back over and smooth that because my daughter just pointed out that, hey,
She's got a gap there.
that's okay. We'll fill it in because it could look like a poop emoji. So we're going to go ahead and just smooth that over. Okay. And then we'll just bring that up and we will just.
Neat.
And we will fill in the gaps with other
you don't
things.
even need filled in now with that.
That's okay. Oh, there go the dogs. I knew they were going to bark eventually. Okay. There we go. They make so much noise. They sound so tough and so vicious. Okay, so we got the stem basically smoothed over so it doesn't look like a poop emoji. And now we're going to add some vines. One thing you could do is if you wanted to put a face on it, make a jack-o'-lantern, you can do that too. Just draw it on. I usually draw with a toothpick and then go in and fill it with icing. We will just go ahead and for vines, there's no what would you call that? Like pattern or design. You're just going to make, no order. You're just making, like nature. So now we're going to trade. Remember I told you that we use the couplets so that when you trade icing tips, you just unscrew that, take that one off, put this one on, and screw that in. So for a leaf tip, we are using tip 352, and you're going to hold it parallel like this, or would that be vertical, not horizontal. And you're just going to go in and just pull out like that. That's at a bad angle, but you'll see it better here. Actually, I should use a larger tip for the size pumpkin we've got. You just go on that cake and just pull it out. Abby, can you get in there a little bit better? Okay, here, let's see. And see, you just put, the more pressure you use, the bigger the leaf is going to be. All right, I switched to a slightly larger leaf tip and I went to a 70. It's a slightly different type of leaf and this actually looks a little bit better. I'm just going to put in a few down here. So I have to tell you, when the dogs make their noise, sometimes Jed, the big one, the boy, he'll go, wah, 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 and it sounds like he's saying mama. So we're trying to teach him to say mama. Thank you so much for joining us. I hope you enjoyed the video on how to make your own pumpkin cake for Halloween or Thanksgiving. Please be sure to like and subscribe and hit that bell notification, and that way you will be notified when I upload new videos. If you have any questions, leave me a comment. I do read your comments, and I'll be glad to answer those questions for you. If I don't know the answer, I'll find it for you. So thanks again for watching. What did you think? What did you think? You like it?
Yeah.
All right. Well, happy birthday.
Thank
you.
To you, happy birthday to you, happy birthday, dear Briana, happy birthday to you.
Okay.
Yay!